right, good to see everybody. Welcome back to Walks on Wall Street. Today is June 25th, 2023. It's about 9:22 p.m. and we're reporting live from Varick Street. And I think we're gonna head to Lower Manhattan today. We'll be able to see the Holland Tunnel, but also as we look to the north, you'll be able to see the Hudson Yards development. Well, hopefully we'll be able to see it, assuming that it's not going to rain. Skies are clear. I do want to apologize for being late. Hold on one second. All right, today is going to be a shorter than normal live stream. We are going to be doing the markets a look ahead stream, where we will be talking about the events, most notable economic events that are going to be coming up on the week ahead on Wall Street. A lot of housing data is going to be coming up. Now, last week was jam-packed and filled with existing home sales data. So we talked about that last week, but this week is actually going to be filled with new home sales data. So huge difference there. Obviously, if we look at the equity market, one of the leading sectors in the market has actually been home builders. So you look at the Pulte Group, you look at KB Home, Toll Brothers, Taylor Morrison Home. In contrast to what the majority of analysts and economists have been saying, they think that housing is going to be a big weak spot in the economy. However, if you look at the market, the stock market, one of the leading sectors has actually been home builders. So we'll talk about that today on the stream. We also have Nike reporting earnings. It's going to be a big week for earnings. I think Jefferies Financial is going to be reporting on Tuesday. And then we will hear some GDP data. So we're going to have some estimates for gross domestic product for the first quarter. I believe expectations for GDP are to increase about 1.4%. That is a 1/10 of a percentage point more than what estimates were last month. So seems like things are moving in the right direction. Equity markets are rebounding. If we take a look at futures, if you look at the E-mini futures contract on the S&P 500, we just opened about 30 minutes ago. Markets are about flat. If you look at the ticker symbol ES, looks like futures opened about 6 points higher, which is nothing to write home about. If you look at the NASDAQ 100 futures, which is the NQs, that contract just opened about 30 minutes ago as well, trading about 23 points higher. And then last but not least, the Dow 30, which the futures contract could be found under the ticker symbol YM. That is also opening a little bit higher, about 47 points higher, trading at $34,024 on the Dow. So let me go ahead and close my laptop and we will get started. Just give me 2 seconds here. All right, good to see everybody. Let's see who we have in the chat. I see Susanna Q4. See Tech Guy is here. What's up? Solo 401, Jack S. Says thank you for streaming tonight. Yeah, it's good to be back. I had to take 2 days off. I actually went to upstate New York. Well, not too far upstate. I had an event to go to in Rye, New York, which was awesome. It was at the Rye Yacht Club, and it was a really, really awesome event. Very cool event. Hopefully I'll be spending more time in that neck of the woods. I believe it's just on the border of Connecticut. Now we are looking northbound. If you see the big development site in the distance, that's actually New York City's Hudson Yards, which I think last week I took you guys on a little bit of a guided tour through that particular neighborhood. I see Robert is here. Says hello, Tom. Sabrina Fair, welcome. Myra King. This is good evening, Tom and chat. See Teresa Diaz, Ryan Beck. Good to see all of you. So what I think we're going to do tonight is we are going to walk directly past the Holland Tunnel. And if we have time, I think that'll lead us directly to Canal Street. Maybe we'll walk over to Little Italy, Chinatown, and conclude. I got back to the city late last night, so had to take care of a couple things today. Hey, Razzle Dazzle 786. It's good to see you too. Hopefully you had a great weekend. Anybody do anything exciting this weekend? I feel like the city was pretty busy. Anybody else feel that way? Now, when I got back to the city, there was so many people. Like walking around the city today, it was packed. I think there was tons of events going on. I think there may have been a parade. I don't know, it seemed like the city was really packed this weekend, which is good, which is always a good sign. Brent is here, says, hey Tom, from Central Ontario, Canada. Smoky here again today, still some fires. That's crazy. I remember 2 weeks ago, or maybe it may have been more than 2 weeks ago now, you know, we were doing that stream, I think it was 2 days in a row, where I believe it was some of the worst air quality in the world, actually. Worse than India, worse than China, and parts of Korea, because sometimes Korea has horrible air quality due to the factories across the water there in China. But it was due to a lot of the wildfires that are breaking out in Canada, which is really heartbreaking and kind of sucks. But I also read something, and I don't know if this is confirmed yet, but there may be some arsonists that are lighting these particular fires in Canada. Now, I don't know if that's confirmed. Has anybody else heard that or read anything about that? If that's the case, I think those individuals or group of people or just one person could be facing some serious, let's just say, legal repercussions for that. Because not only has that been affecting us humans, this is the Dominic Hotel, brand new development, but think about all the wildlife that kills, right? I mean, oftentimes we think about these major forest fires, and it translates into the economic climate too, right? Because oftentimes we'll talk about the housing market live here on the stream, and one of the things that's really impacting states like California specifically is a lot of insurance companies are just deciding to pull out of the state, right? I think we got some news about 2 weeks ago that State Farm announced that they are no longer going to be writing new insurance policies in the state of California as it relates to homeowners insurance. However, existing policy holders, so if you have an existing homeowners policy with State Farm in the state of California, I think you will still be serviced. But one of the main reasons why they've been doing that, and a lot of insurance companies have been pulling out of the state, is because of these fires that have been happening more and more and more, you know, due to obvious factors. You could say climate change, but also there's been some rumors that people have actually been starting these fires, which is pretty devastating, and it does have an economic impact. Hey, Western Mass Dave. DM says the video is blurry. Maybe I didn't set it to 1080p. Hold on, let me see. Or maybe it's because I have the Wi-Fi on. Let me see. Tracy says the air is bad in Winnipeg too because of the fires. Elliott Wave Review, what's up? Says Southern Quebec currently has the worst air quality in history. People are wearing masks outside. Yeah, that's horrible. Yeah, I have a couple friends in Korea that they say oftentimes they have to wear masks outside because of the microdust. Yeah, not good. Not good. Not good at all. So this is the main entrance to the Holland Tunnel. And I want you guys to take note of the changing, I should say, architectural landscape of this particular part of Manhattan. And you can see exactly what I'm talking about. You can see this is one of the original buildings. You can actually see it dates back to 1870. However, look right next to it. You're seeing a lot of these older buildings being bought up, demolished, and in its place stands these ultra luxury apartment condominiums. And almost the entire block is kind of like that too, right? For a few exceptions, like this guy. But as you look all the way down, you see Dominic Street right here. All the new buildings and all the new development sort of take this similar, or I should say same architectural design. Super tall glass buildings here. Hey, Boomer Tuber, thank you so much for your $1 donation. Appreciate it very, very much. This is appreciate the business info shared. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Russ says, Tom, I heard they do not do controlled burns in Canada. That's true. So that's another, it may sound counterintuitive, but one of the ways to prevent these massive fires from breaking out, so to speak, is to actually do controlled burns on particular sites that are drier than normal, right? So the theory is, if you can do controlled burns where you can sort of get ahead of the problem and sort of containerize it, if you will, that's going to prevent an uncontrolled outbreak of these massive fires. And I think you're correct on that controlled burns are not allowed in Canada, which could be adding to the problem. But again, I'm not an expert, but Russ says, love your walks. Appreciate that, Russ. Thank you so much. Kind of a quiet night. You would think Sunday night in the city, especially near the Holland Tunnel, there would be a lot of people commuting out of the city to go back to New Jersey and the like. Because today was pretty packed today. I think there was some Pride celebrations. There was, I think, multiple parades going on. There's just so many people in the city, so I would expect there would be more traffic here. But I think what I want to do tonight on the live stream is just to quickly do a recap of where we are in the market and maybe a little bit of a general forecast of where we might be going, in addition to quickly running through the notable earnings reports that are coming up this week on Wall Street, in addition to some of the new home sales data, right? So in terms of new home sales, we always look to the Census Bureau. So we're getting new home sales data for May, which should be interesting to explore, right? Because as we've said before on our walks, if you look at the sector breakdown in the market, so talking about the equity market, home builders have been leaders, which you really wouldn't think they would be, right? Because every single, I guess you could say, factor that generally plays into valuations of real estate are sort of going against the grain, if you will. So the Federal Reserve being steadfast in their hiking cycle, although at the last FOMC meeting, which was about 2 to 3 weeks ago, the Federal Reserve actually chose to pause interest rates. So the Fed funds rate still stands at a target rate of 5% to 5.25 of a percentage point. However, as we reviewed multiple times, and you guys are about to see an amazing view. Look at that. That's an awesome view of One World Trade Center. But as we talked about last week, we heard from the Fed chair again. So we heard from Fed Chair Jerome Powell as he was testifying before Congress. And I think the main takeaway from that testimony was that, according to the Fed chair, the vast majority of voting members at the Federal Reserve are in agreement that we need at least one more rate hike, which will probably be in the amount of 25 basis points. We'll probably get that in July, which July is in about a week here, which is kind of crazy. I think we're 2 days away from being halfway through the year, if that makes sense, which is almost unbelievable to me in a way. Corner of Watch Street. So we'll see. so in the face of rising interest rates, you would think real estate valuations would be cratering and plummeting. They are going down, and we're seeing a little bit of a reprieve in pricing. We talked about the National Association of Realtors as they released their existing home sales last week. And the median home sales price actually went down about 3%. So we're coming down a little bit, but new home sales prices are also coming down. I think the all-time record high, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was about $500,000. I think this was back in October. This is going to be a new construction site of probably some super tall building. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. But if you look at the median sales price for a home, last October for new home sales, I think hit that. It was about at $500,000, which is wild. But many economists are expecting the new median sales price to actually decline about 15% to $420,800, which would also make sense, right? Because as we've been doing deep dives into these individual earnings reports, let's say of KB Home, Toll Brothers, Pulte Group, Taylor Morrison Home, even though sales transactions are still holding relatively steady, these businesses, talking about the home builders, have been having to get a little bit creative in order to get those deals done. And what do I mean by creativity? Well, I mean offering sales concessions, right? So throwing in money to get these deals done. And that could involve, paying down points on mortgage origination, or even just discounting the prices of these homes in order to close these deals. So I think that's why you're seeing median sales price of new homes come down a little bit. Wow, check out this view. This is on the corner of Grand Street and Thompson. This is actually facing northbound. And you could see the One Vanderbilt building. Pretty unobstructed view of it. Let me see if I could zoom in for you guys. Hey, Abdul is here. What's up, Dusty Cole, FredX? Solo 401. We're gonna be able to see some amazing views of One World Trade Center tonight. Robbie's here. What's up? Line Sync. Hey, Sparks Carnival says Carnival Cruise reports earnings before the bell. Love travel stocks for the summer. So Sparks Carnival, you're right. I think they report tomorrow. What are you expecting for Nike? Because Nike, I believe, is reporting what, on Thursday? I think it's Nike, Paychex, and McCormick. Those are going to be the main three stocks that are reporting on Thursday. What are you expecting? Now, I think you'll see a little bit of inventory build across the board. I think on Lululemon's earnings report, they had briefly mentioned that, which may eat into margins, but from the economic environment, it's at least in New York City and Miami, it doesn't really seem like things are slowing down. I mean, does this look like a recession to you guys? This is a Sunday night and it seems like all the bars and restaurants are absolutely packed. Hey, Elliot Wave Reviews says, Tom, do you think a collapse of the Russia Federation would be good or bad for the US or European markets? Well, I think long term it's good, but I'm not too keen, or I'm not too read up on sort of what's going on in the Russia-Ukraine situation. I guess allegedly there's some sort of military coup that's going on now, isn't there? Now, I don't know if that's believable or not. I don't think we could believe much of what's coming out of there, but I will say this. I was reading an interesting article in Barron's today, which I think all of you should read as well. And it was talking about fund flows globally. And it mainly highlighted the United States, and it also highlighted India. It's interesting because we've been talking about this phenomenon, that I think this really started with COVID, right? And the virus sort of taught companies and big investment firms and even retail investors that they really need to be diversifying away their manufacturing capacity away from China, away from specific Asian markets, and back to the United States, back to North America specifically, right? You think about Canada as well, I think is going to be a big beneficiary of this. So if you look at fund flows, there's actually been more money coming into the United States in the manufacturing sector specifically than ever before, beating out investment going into manufacturing production in China for the first time in a while. So I think you're actually going to see a big geographic shift in terms of manufacturing capacity and in terms of being the workshop of the world, so to speak, right? Because what is the old saying? That China is the workshop of the world? I think that's going to change in a big way. And that, I believe, right, selfishly so, that's going to benefit the United States. It's going to benefit Mexico. It's going to benefit Canada. And last but not least, I think it's going to benefit India in a huge way. One of my good buddies sent me a direct message on Twitter showing the conversation between Modi, the leader of India, and Tim Cook, I think at the White House. And Tim Cook is a huge bull on India. Huge. I don't know, what do you guys think about that? Nina says, Tom, from your words to God's ears, hope you're right. Yeah, I mean, just follow the money, right? I think that's one of the things that I've been pretty well to, or I would say is pretty well to identify trends, is just follow the money, right? Money doesn't lie, and money is flowing in the United States more than ever before, specifically into the manufacturing sector. And I think that's going to be good for not only the US, but North America. Dan Zhang says, Tom, are you expecting to see a hike in gold and silver prices in the coming week due to political instability with Russia? Silver futures are up 2% already in Asia session, which is also rare. No, I don't know. I think you make a good point, right? Anytime you have instability, what tends to perform well? Things that are stable and things that are considered safe havens, like gold, silver, platinum, palladium, pretty much precious metals and commodities in general, right? But again, my question to you guys is, how credible, and I don't know, I've sort of bowed out, so to speak, as it relates to the geopolitical conversation, because I just don't know what we can trust and what we can't trust. Does that make sense? So maybe somebody in the chat has a little bit more expertise on what's going on over in Russia and Ukraine, but how viable and how real do you think is this, I would say, so-called military coup that's going on? Yeah, Sparks Carnival says, Tom, Apple is pushing in India hard, very, very hard. Now, I believe Tim Cook ripped all of the manufacturing, or I should say iPad manufacturing, away from China to India. So I think all of the, I should say, new builds of iPads, India's gonna get that business and not China. Hey, Smee Media's here, what's up? Good to see you. Susanna Q4 says, New York City is rebounding and money is flowing. That it is, New York City is rebounding. We are on Canal Street, everybody. Seems like traffic is picking up a little bit. Now, Canal Street cuts across the entire island of Manhattan. It'll take you all the way to the Holland Tunnel on Manhattan's west side, and it'll take you all the way to the east side, all the way down there, as it'll take you to the Manhattan Bridge, which I think is going to be there. Ken Brockton says the coup is over. I haven't really been following it. So what is the result of the coup, Ken Brockton? What has been the result? Joan K, what's up? Joseph Hardaway, welcome. Good to see you. We're going to be walking down Canal Street all the way to Chinatown, Little Italy. Let me just catch up on some of the comments. Sparks Carnival says NVIDIA's valuation is hitting historically high levels. Board insiders are selling, and it's attracting competition. Google claims they can make better data center chips. Is it time to sell? I don't know. My view has been that I think the mega caps that have been really driving much of the stock market movement, right? Pretty much all the major equity indices are well off their lows. In some cases rallying over 20%, right? Which is indicative with the new bull market. Check out these fire escapes on these buildings. So I wouldn't be surprised to see those big mega caps take a little bit of a breather here over the summer, which would be normal, right? I mean, if you look at the move that Alphabet has done off the lows, Microsoft, Apple, I think it would be appropriate for these stocks to give a little bit back, which will probably be on low volume, right? Assuming a new bull market. This pullback should be on low volume, not very disturbing high volume. And potentially we have some fund flows or a rotation, a sector rotation into some of the smaller caps, right? Like the Russell 2000, because small caps have really been a lagger for one main reason. And that's mainly because small caps generally don't perform well in a high inflation environment or a high inflationary environment. But I guess the good news there is that inflation's coming down, right? I mean, we just got the CPI report out, and inflation continues to cool. Now, the one, I would say, tight spot where we're not really seeing inflation come down is in shelter costs. And the problem there is that shelter costs makes up about 33% of the whole CPI index. So unless we get some substantial decrease in rents or property values, I think that particular section of the CPI report will stay pretty elevated, unfortunately. Hey, Brian71, what's up? Says, hey Tom, what do you think about the XRP SEC case? I don't know, I haven't really been following it in full transparency. I think I've said a couple times my position, if you will, on a lot of the alt coins or alternative coins out there. And my position has been this. And it's really come to fruition over the last couple weeks in a big way. I said, look, Gary Gensler, chairman of the SEC, head of the SEC, in my opinion, in my view, has been very derelict in his duties to provide substantial regulatory clarity as it relates to the cryptocurrency market. So what does that mean? Well, a lot of the broker dealers like Binance, Coinbase, Gemini, and the like, even though they may not technically be doing something wrong, if there's no regulatory clarity as to are these altcoins securities? Are they commodities? Are they property, right? If there's no clarity there, the SEC could come down whenever they want and say, hey, you are soliciting unlicensed and unregistered securities. And that's exactly what they've done over the past 2 weeks, right? I believe the SEC has sued Binance, I believe, and Coinbase, and I think Gemini as well, as it relates to these altcoins. So XRP or Ripple, I think, is the token. I think XRP is the token, Ripple is the company, is one of those altcoins. So I've really stayed away from that whole space because there's no rules there. So I don't really want to get wrapped up in purchasing those assets, if you can call them that. Do I think there's a lot of potential, and am I a long-term bull on that environment or that ecosystem? Of course. But until there's some sort of substantial clarity in the regulatory environment, I think unfortunately the United States is going to miss out on a lot of those opportunities, and that's just going to go overseas, right? It's going to go to Malta, it's going to go to the UAE and the like. However, I do own Bitcoin and continue to be bullish there because the SEC has specifically stated that Bitcoin is property, right? So as long as you give me the rules, I'm willing to play within the rules, but I don't want to get wrapped up in a mess. All right, I don't have the mental fortitude for that. Some people do, and good on them, but I don't. Hey, TD is here. Teresa Diaz, good to see you. TD is our Cali friend. Always love to see the viewers from California in the chat. All right, so we're walking down Canal Street. I'll give you a quick 360-degree view of the street. You can see the diversity in architecture here pretty well. Hey, MBA Elias, what's up? This is Tom. Hope you had a good weekend. I did. I had a lot of fun. I went to upstate New York. Well, not upstate, but Rye. If you guys are familiar with Rye, New York, I went to an event at the Rye Yacht Club. It was an awesome event. I had a lot of fun. Hey, good to see you. Take care. And I'm happy that I went. Julia M, what's up? This is Hey Tom and fam. Julia, are you still in LA? It seemed like you've been in Miami, you've been in New York, you've been in LA, traveling all over. I never know where you are. Photos from around New York. Good to see you. Abdullah, welcome. All right, let me catch up on some of the comments here. Nina is talking about the rental environment in California. Let me see. Says rentals are still on the high end in Southern California. Essentials too, ultimately we must join together no matter personal choice. Interesting. Lena Sandoval, what's up? Adrian Pommels. Jimmy Vines is here. Says, hey Tom from Hollywood, California. So glad the smoke is cleared in New York. Yeah, thank God. I mean, we had a couple Canadians in the chat earlier that were saying the fires are starting to ramp up again, unfortunately. But JF says anything north of the Bronx is upstate. Now, does anybody notice this building here on the corner of Broadway and Canal? You might be reminded, I'll say late 2022, this particular building right on the corner. We actually used to start our live streams right here. And that was the WeWork building. I'm not sure if there's a WeWork office there anymore. The building actually kind of looks abandoned and vacant, but we used to start right here, overlooking the, I guess you could say the makeshift shops here on Canal Street. All the people wheeling and dealing the designer handbags that are fake, right? Hey, Life, Liberty, and Guns, what's up? Prices in Chino Hills, California are crazy too, 45 miles from East Los Angeles. So Chino Hills, I'm familiar with that, but also not at the same time. And hopefully that doesn't sound strange. Chino Hills, California, I think is a very well-to-do, upscale neighborhood of California. Is that correct? So I was actually on a call the other day with one of the top real estate brokers in California, particularly Southern California. And what they've been seeing in their market is that the neighborhoods that have historically been well-to-do, right? So if you talk about socioeconomic status, right? Higher incomes, better wages, better jobs, I would say income per capita. That real estate has actually been doing well relative to some of the more quote unquote, maybe low end or middle end, I should say. Which I guess makes sense, right? Because the luxury market, from what I hear from many friends that are top brokers in California and New York, has oftentimes turned into like art dealings in a way, where many high net worth individuals or even corporations can view these properties as almost like trophies in the sky, or, you know, a beautiful Bel Air mansion is going to trade for, you know, ridiculous prices. You're seeing the same thing in Palm Beach. Are you guys seeing that too in California, where it seems as if the ultra luxury end still has demand, particularly for foreign investment, foreign purchases, which we are going to talk about, because that, I wanted to make tomorrow's stream, actually, since tonight's going to be a little bit shorter, about global fund flows and how and why it's so important to track and keep tabs on global money flows, right? And inflation has a lot to do with that. So we're going to talk about that as well. Hey, Western Mass Dave, what's up, man? Good to see you. Photos from around New York as I was reassured that the Rolex I bought on the corner was real. Yeah, hilarious. Hey, Rich, what's up? Life, Liberty, and Guns. Prices in Chino Hills, 45 minutes from LA. All right, let's cross here. Two more blocks will be in Chinatown. Adam says, Tom, I work on many of these projects in Los Angeles. Many are foreign buyers that turn them into high-end rentals. They are safe investments, says Adam. So Adam makes a good point. And I think this is a very relevant trend to follow. So I think what we're about to talk about is sort of rides in tandem with what Adam is saying. So I'll give you guys a data point, because I'll preface this by saying this. Everybody is so laser focused on inflation data and CPI numbers in the United States. Has anybody noticed that? So if you've been involved in finance or worked on Wall Street or anything, you know, over the last decade, whenever we got CPI numbers out, like nobody cared. Like I remember, you know, times in the US where nobody really cared about the CPI data at all. It was like a non-issue on Wall Street. They would say it on CNBC for 2 seconds and no one would really talk about it. Well, that was because for, you know, the past decade, inflation has actually been relatively under the Fed's target of 2%. And there were times where the Fed chair actually wanted inflation a little bit higher. So obviously after the pandemic, when inflation really started to ramp up because we printed so much money, tons of fiscal and monetary stimulus, you know, everybody and their mother is talking about inflation in the US. Well, I think that is good to talk about. However, I always say focus on a global macro approach, right? A top-down, bottom-up, I would say systematic process as it relates to finding investment opportunities. Now, why is this? Well, if you zoom out and you look at comparative inflation rates abroad, particularly in some of these countries that we're going to talk about, I mean, they would dream of 4.7% inflation. They would literally dream about it. So we just recently got some inflation data out of Argentina. Now, Argentina has the 4th highest inflation in the entire world. Now, I believe in April, the value of the peso fell 25% in that month alone. Now, does anybody want to guess what the inflation rate is in Argentina? Anybody want to guess? It's 4.7% in the United States. Does anybody want to take a crack at it where it is in Argentina right now? And this is just one particular country. Ryan Bex is 100% close. You're very, very close, almost right on the money. Tyler says 24%, long ways away. You know, Dusty Cole, you're about 4 percentage points off. Hey, Andreas, what's up, man? So you guys are close. If you guessed 114%, you would be right on the money. So think about that, right? And this is why, you know, one of my friends used to be on the desk of Pan-European Equities at Goldman Sachs. He was a managing director there. And he would always hammer this into my head. He would say, zoom out, right? When you're building your investment framework, you want to build it from top down, bottom up. Because when you build it from top down, you start to understand global fund flows. So let's go back to Adam's comment about, he said, look, I work on a lot of these real estate developments in California, multi-million-dollar properties, and we're seeing an uptick in foreign purchases. Well, why would somebody from Argentina want to buy, you know, a $10 million asset, $20 million asset in the United States, when many people would say, oh, that's just frivolous spending, you know, that's just the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. Well, it's to preserve wealth, right? I mean, if your money in Argentina is getting inflated away to the tune of 114% a year, yeah, of course you're gonna have ridiculous capital outflows from that country. I'm not just picking on Argentina, by the way. This is just one example because we just got those numbers out. But this is why it's important to pay attention to global inflation rates, right? Money is coming into the United States. Money is going into countries that have relatively low inflation rates. And that is a big reason why, you know, when we talk about Billionaires Row, for example, on 57th Street, you know, some of these apartments are $20, $30 million. And many of these ultra wealthy, ultra high net worth individuals, they never even go into these apartments, right? I think there's a listing at 432 Park Avenue, excuse me. There's a listing on the, I think it's the 80th, I forget which unit it is, but if you guys just type in 432 Park Avenue, Tal Alexander has the listing. I believe it was purchased for $98 million by a Saudi retail tycoon, and he's gonna sell it, I think, at about a $10 million loss. Now, that's just one very, very specific example. I think if you wanna, you know, keep the conversation to Argentina, there's a building in New York called Olympic Tower. And the vast majority of original purchasers in that building were from Argentina, Chile, and the like. You know, people are just looking for a place to park their wealth, to preserve it, right? They're not necessarily looking to make a huge return on it. They're just looking to park their wealth in a safe place. And what's safer of a place than at the top of 432 Park Avenue, or at the top of Central Park South, or on a gated community in Chino Hills, California, right? And these are just some examples. You know it's gonna be safe, you know it's always gonna be there, and most importantly, it's not going to be confiscated away from you, right? It's so paramount, and that's one of the most attractive things about the United States is, in general, right, comparative analysis here, in comparing it to other countries around the world. What's so unique to the United States is we have individual freedoms and individual property rights and ownership rights. And that appeals in a big way to foreign investors. So it's a good point. I'm glad Adam said that. Everybody, welcome to Little Italy. We haven't been here in a while. When's the last time I took you guys to Little Italy on this stream? I feel like it's been over a month now. But this is on the corner of Hester Street. Beautiful architecture down here. Hey, Hawaii, what's up? Always a pleasure to see you. Victor Bravo, welcome. Yeah, everybody's saying it's been several months. I feel like that's correct. MBA Elias says, Tom, at 114%, no wonder many Argentines are dying to get to the United States. 4% to them seems like a rounding error. Yeah, and it's a big problem in other parts of the world. Hyperinflation is I think it's unethical inflation, but I don't want to get too political. Hey, Design Ideas, thank you so much for your very kind $10 donation. This evening, Tom, looks like a big week for business news headlines. Yeah, it should be pretty busy. I don't think it'll be as busy as weeks prior. You know, we just got to get a few things out of the way. We're getting GDP numbers too. We're getting updated GDP estimates. But then, not next week, but the week after, it's the 4th of July. So I think it's probably going to be pretty calm, pretty cool. I can't even believe I'm saying that. It's going to be the 4th of July. Pretty wild. But in terms of the recession indicator, you know, if we want to do some impromptu market research, it looks like people are out and about and spending freely here in Little Italy. Restaurants seem to be booming. Yeah, Anderson. Here in Brazil, we are at incredible inflation rate. Yeah, it's wild, man. Love Brazil, by the way. I would love to visit. Now, what are some of the things, you know, because we have Brazilians in the chat, we have people from Argentina. What are your preferred inflation hedges? Right, what are some of your preferred inflation hedges? Would you just say real estate, US equities perhaps? Hey, Blues Writer, what's up? Yeah, the pasta index does seem to be up. Lots of pasta being consumed here. Vinny Castellano, thank you for joining us. Hopefully your move went well and you're feeling a little bit better. Ryan Bex as well, it shows how critical and why the Fed is so focused on getting inflation under control. Agreed. Yeah, I think just Americans can lose sight of, I feel like Americans, and this is a critique against me as well, we live in our own little bubble, right? And it's important to zoom out to understand what people from other countries are dealing with, right? We just gave that one little instance of inflation, but you know, think about it like this as well. Sparks Carnival made a good point, right? He was talking about the relative valuation of NVIDIA, right? Big semiconductor company. And he said, is this a potential area here where you could have some of these semiconductor companies that ran up so much start to give back a little bit? Well, I think maybe could we ask the question, and I know causation, correlation, you know, I know that whole bit, but why do we think the US equity market has gone on this really, really big rally? Right now, usually markets are forward looking 6 months, right? We get that. But is it possible that people from around the world are using the US equity market as a place to park their cash? That could also be a reason. That could also be a reason. Hey, Maurice Palmer, good to see you. Look at these beautiful white fire escapes here. I'm glad the city closes down this street. I think it adds a more European vibe to the city, right? When you see people eating outside, dining outdoors, no cars whizzing by. I think I would vote for a more pedestrian-friendly New York. What do you guys think? Sort of like what they did near 23rd Street, if you're familiar with that. They did a really good job with making 23rd and Broadway, I believe, as you go down towards Madison Square Park. That is all pedestrian-friendly now. Really nice. Smee Media says vote yes, vote for cakes is absolutely agreed. Yeah, I just think it's nicer to be able to walk in the middle of the street. Selfishly, right? Maybe it's not the best for the cars, but it's a more livable city than just cramming everybody on the sidewalk. Hey, Zandu is here. Says, how are you tonight? Just wondering, what are your thoughts on Tesla stock? Are they a good investment? Well, I can't, we don't really give opinions on individual stocks. I can't tell you what to buy or not, just for obvious reasons. We mainly talk about the economy and the market in generalities. I can't give specific advice because I'm not licensed to do that. But I will say I think Tesla is leaps and bounds ahead of the vast majority of companies as it relates to AI and machine learning and data. I would consider Tesla more of a big data company. However, did anybody see the live stream where I believe it was Ross Gerber at Gerber Capital Management? They actually did a live stream of Tesla self-driving, and I was so under-impressed with Tesla's self-driving capability. Now, does anybody know what I'm talking about before I go off on a big tangent here? Did anybody see they did a live recording in California of the Tesla self-driving technology? And the Tesla was blowing stop signs at 35 miles an hour. So I think it has a little bit of a long ways to go. So I wasn't too impressed with that. That was actually a big concern for me. Because I don't drive. I mean, you guys know that. I walk everywhere. I did say though, if, oh, what does this say? Hold on, I'm getting distracted. Oh, this is the Cannoli King's 50th anniversary. That is so cool. I didn't know that. So the bakery right here, Cannoli King, it's been open 50 years. Very cool. But I don't know, thoughts about that? Anybody have a Tesla? Who here has a Tesla and has enjoyed the self-driving experience? Joseph Hardaway makes a good point. Says AI is the first topic that's actually real and not just hype, like NFTs and stuff. That's true, although many companies have been using the term AI in their earnings reports just to generate, you know, essentially clickbait, if you will. But there are companies that are actually real world use cases for that. Steve CR says self-driving is still a few years away. Anybody here has a Tesla? Who's a Tesla owner here? Sparks Carnival says underimpressed with Tesla's self-driving. I like Mobileye though. So Mobileye, now I feel like we've talked about that company before. So I'll tell you a quick story about what one of my friends said. And my friend runs a very successful hedge fund in Chicago. And the reason why I'm telling you this story is Mobileye went public, I believe, late last year. Late 2022, I believe, Mobileye. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But you should really pay attention to companies that are IPOing when there's a massive downturn in the IPO market. So when the spigot for capital shuts off. So why is that? Well, I'll sort of tell you. In 2021, if you look at the earnings of all of these Wall Street mega banks, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, they posted record years for deal flow, deal making on Wall Street. That includes both IPOs and SPACs. So a SPAC stands for Special Purpose Acquisition Company. So the deal flow on Wall Street in 2021 was just bonkers. It was off the charts. The vast majority of those companies were horrible companies. No earnings, right? Cash flow negative. But what was the common denominator in 2021? Well, it was liquidity, right? Liquidity drives markets. And due to the virus, the big C, as I call it, both the federal government and the Federal Reserve had to spend a ton of money, right? So you had monetary stimulus on one side, adding kerosene to the fire, and then you had fiscal stimulus on the other side, adding juice to the fire. Liquidity was freely flowing throughout the entire market, and any company could raise money to go public. But once the Federal Reserve switched from their quantitative easing cycle to quantitative tightening, interest rates started to go up. The Federal Reserve started to shrink their balance sheet, sucking liquidity out of the market. Well, what happened? Well, the IPO market virtually shut off. In terms of transaction volumes of deal flow on Wall Street, oh man, that's an awesome photo. Look at that. That's Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and Frank Sinatra. Man, that is an awesome photo. Check that out. Oh. I haven't seen that before. Those are probably my three favorite guys of all time. The Rat Pack, you're right, the Rat Pack. Love that. I forgot what I was saying, but I guess it doesn't matter. Dean Martin and the Rat Pack are more important. Oh yeah, the IPOs. So if the theory is if you can raise money and have investors cough up money during a bear market when everybody is so scared, that means that company is probably of premium quality and you should pay attention. So to go back to what Sparks Carnival was saying about Mobileye, Mobileye went public when the IPO market was essentially non-existent. So if you can get a deal done and you could pitch investors to pony up cash in a severe bear market, that company is probably of premium quality. Now, I'm not saying go out and buy the stock, but I'm just saying you watch that company. Yeah, Greg says Sopranos was great to watch. Melissa 2087 says, hey Tom, just tuned in, where are we? We're on the corner of Mulberry Street. We did a quick walkthrough of Little Italy. Haven't been here in a long time. Beautiful night. Beautiful night out here in New York. Right on Mulberry Street. Vinny Castellanos' thoughts on Norway or Sweden joining NATO. I don't really have any thoughts on it, just to be totally transparent. I'm not a big geopolitical buff. I don't even know what's going on in that whole realm. What are your thoughts on it? Anybody who's an expert or has expertise in that field, I'd love to know. I'd love to learn. Grumpy Gramps says you should get a gelato. I think I probably should, shouldn't I? Hey, Austin City Limits, what's up? EDM says, hey there. Prodman says, I think tomorrow the Spy will fly. Steve CR says, Dean Martin and John Wayne movie was the best. I pretty much like anything Dean Martin. Anything Dean Martin. Well, speaking of gelato, this looks like a pretty busy gelato place, and I think it's new as well. New to the community. Organic juice bar. Love looking at all the original architecture here on these buildings. The Angry Cynic says, yeah, NATO is the terrorist organization of the world and was never supposed to expand east. Vinny Castellanos says, I'm all for them joining, but I don't know what's in it for the US. Yeah, like again, I'm not too read up on that. Should I be? Probably. But I just try to prioritize what's, the best use of my time. And I think the geopolitical environment is so dynamic that you sort of have to have expertise to really understand it, at least in my view. I want to actually take you guys to a very good Egyptian restaurant. Since it's at the top of the hour, I haven't taken you guys here since last summer. So on the northernmost tip of Little Italy, if you make a left, it's going to take you to one of my favorite Egyptian restaurants in the city. It's right here to your left. It's called Zuba. I think it may be closed. Let's see. Or maybe it is closing, but here it is. This place is great. Highly, highly recommend it. It's on the corner of Cleveland Street. And usually during hours of operations, they open all of these sliding glass doors. So it's a really cool vibe, very cool setup. Oh, this is new. This actually wasn't here before. So they have sort of the kiosks where you could order, but this place is great and it's actually pretty cheap too. You can get a nice lunch for under 15 bucks. Hey, Haas Manning, what's up? MBIS Elias tells Tom, who owns most of the older classic buildings in New York State? individuals or real estate companies. I think it's mainly a mix of both, but also you'd be surprised about how much real estate the city owns. I think you'd be very, very surprised with just how much real estate the city of New York owns. Now, when you think about all of those older buildings, this is kind of cool, seeing all the graffiti here. But think about all the older buildings that used to be in the place of Billionaires Row, right? You think of Central Park Tower, 220 Central Park South, all the monstrosity buildings, right? Now, obviously, prior to that, look at how cool the kitchen is here. Now, obviously, prior to that, there were older buildings, hotels and the like. So in New York City, it's very unique here because you could purchase air rights and you could sort of stack them on top of one another. But the process of that is called assemblage. So for example, 432 Park Avenue, the developers had to build or had to purchase 3 or 4 neighboring buildings in order to be able to build that high, if that makes sense. So it's sort of like a big game of Monopoly, right? If you want to build a super tall, luxurious skyscraper, you need to have enough air rights to do so. And many times when you hear about these crazy stories of developers, you know, buying out individuals for, you know, $50 million for their apartment complex when it's really not worth that. You know, one of the main reasons why they do that is because they're trying to assemble all of those, that lot space together and build up. And the process of that is called assemblage. And there's a particular book that came out that's a must read. You guys have got to read this book. And the book is called Billionaires Row. And it's written by one of the most prominent and well-known Wall Street Journal real estate reporters. And if you want to peek into the New York City real estate business, particularly on the development side, going back all the way to the 1800s, that is a must-read book. That is an absolute must-read book. But if you guys are enjoying the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We do these live streams usually starting at 8:30. We try to do them 7 days a week. Hey, Michael Joseph says Manhattan is slowly sinking. Wonder how much more weight it can handle. I saw something about that too. I think San Francisco, New York, and Miami have that same problem. Hey, D is here. What's up, D? Now, here's something interesting about Columbus Circle. You know the Time Warner Center that sits literally right at Columbus Circle? It's like pretty much the staple of Columbus Circle. And that building pretty much saved the neighborhood in a way. Because before the Time Warner Center was there, well, now it's actually the Deutsche Bank Towers. Deutsche Bank left 60 Wall Street and moved uptown. It used to be a big convention center. So think about the Jacob Javits Center, the kind of things that building does, but there used to be a big one right at Columbus Circle. And once they opened the Jacob Javits Center close to Penn Station, you know, brand new, all glass, big convention hall where they have a lot of, you know, think about Comic-Con, they have the auto show, the air show, a bunch of interesting things there. Once the Jacob Javits Center opened in Manhattan, they closed down the convention center right at Columbus Circle. And once they did that, you saw that whole neighborhood decline into urban decay, right? Lots of drug trade in and around that particular building. It actually was acted as a bus stop for people that were living in New York City to get bused to see their family who were incarcerated in upstate New York. And it was just, it was not a good place. And it was in such stark contrast of the neighborhood, right? Because that's the start of Central Park. So many tourists were going there in the 80s to view Central Park, to see all the tourist attractions. And you had this big eyesore of the convention center right where the Deutsche Bank Tower sits. And it was a big problem. So the Related Group, which is a big real estate developer, in 2006 broke ground on the AOL Time Warner Center, which is now known as the Deutsche Bank Tower. But at the time, there were a lot of New Yorkers that didn't think that building was going to do well. Now, why did many New Yorkers at the time think the Time Warner Centers was not going to do well? Well, if you Google Deutsche Bank Tower or Time Warner Center at Columbus Circle, it has not exact resemblance of the old World Trade Centers, but similar in that it has dual twin towers. So the theory was nobody is ever going to want to buy apartments in a building that resembles the World Trade Centers just 5 years after 2001. No office space is going to want to, sign a lease there, and nobody's going to want to stay in the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. Well, that couldn't have been further from the truth. And ever since the Related Group finished the Time Warner Center, there was, in the Time Warner Center, specifically in the southernmost tower, there was record sales prices for the most luxurious apartment properties or condominiums in all of New York City. And that is loosely termed to have what saved Columbus Circle, is the Related Group deciding to build the Time Warner Center. And it sort of revitalized the entire neighborhood. And due to the sales being so good at the Time Warner Center, a few years later in 2008, which just so happened to be the heart of the financial crisis, guess what was built a few blocks north? 15 Central Park West, which we always talk about all the time. Does anybody remember? Maybe I'll take you guys there tomorrow, but 15 Central Park West sits exactly adjacent to 1 Central Park West, which is the Trump International Hotel and Tower, which is a luxurious 5-star hotel in Manhattan. But 15 Central Park West, at the time, was one of the most exclusive properties, or one of the most exclusive addresses in the city. Former CEO of Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein, has a really nice apartment there. You have baseball player at the time, Derek Jeter, as well as Alex Rodriguez, both had units there. Denzel Washington, Sting, I believe, still has a property there to this day. Also, some major venture capitalists are there. So that's a little bit of history about what revitalized Columbus Circle. So you could essentially say that the Related Group saved Columbus Circle in a way. All right, now we are at the Bowery. The Bowery and Delancey Street. I kind of like coming here. We never come here. It's a very hip neighborhood of the city. A little bit grungy. Maybe that's too harsh of a term to use, but I think it's appropriate. It's more rustic. It's more urban. And just 20 years ago, this wasn't the best neighborhood, the Bowery, but it's very fashionable. Very New York, and you have great views of the Empire State Building all the way to the north. Yeah, Blues Writer is like, oh my God, the Bowery. Be careful of axe-wielding McDonald's customers. I'm looking alive. I'm watching my 6 for axe-wielding McDonald's customers. Dusty Cole, good to see you. Arsenal Fan 13, so speaking of the Javits Center, there's a new mixed-use development being planned on the corner of West 41st Street and 11th Avenue. Oh, you know what? You sent me an email, Arsenal Fan 13, about that. I glanced over it briefly, but I'm very intrigued in that project. So I will connect with you via email on that, because I'm very interested in that. I'm glad that you actually sent me that email. So thank you for that. At least I think it was you. Yeah, it was definitely you. Now, I think down here is Prince Street Pizza, but I think it's closed. So maybe I'll show you another night. ETC 333 is here. What's up? Michael Joseph says Williamsburg people can walk right across the bridge. It's also a big bike community too. There's tons of bikers that bike across the Williamsburg Bridge each and every day to commute. It's a good point. Beautiful views. Look at this outdoor dining area. It's almost like an outdoor garage kind of setup. This sort of reminds me of Brooklyn. If anybody's been to Greenpoint, sort of reminds me of that neighborhood. You have a lot of these sort of like garage door style outdoor seating areas. Yeah, so NBA Elias is Tom. Another project I keep hearing about is the casino project proposal at the Hudson Yards. I think it's just north of the Hudson Yards, is it not? Now, I'm a little bit biased here. I think that would be really bad for the city. In my opinion, now I know there's people that are for it, I get it. But in my humble opinion, I think a casino at the Hudson Yards or Times Square would be very bad for the city. Very, very bad. Let's get a gauge on that sentiment. Who here would be in favor of the casino at Times Square or the Hudson Yards? Anybody? Sparks Carnival says I'm against and opposed to casinos myself also. Hey, Madison 32's here. Hey, Madison. Thanks for joining. Yeah, Blues Rider is like, we already got a casino. It's called Wall Street, specifically Park Avenue. It's funny. Yeah, everybody's like, no casino. Shady 901 says the casino would be no worse or no better than anything else. Look, I respect that comment. Maybe I'm wrong about casinos. Who knows? Christy F says bad idea. Carol Brown says absolutely not. Hey, Chad McCabe says Tom, casino in New York City, yeah, probably not a good idea. Zozo Bob says, Tom, does New York City have casinos? We do, but they're in the outer boroughs of Queens, near the airport. Now, I think one of the largest casino operators, I'm actually going to tell you guys a quick story. I got to go, but I'm going to tell you guys a quick story. And I posted a little bit of an excerpt on my Twitter. So if you guys want to connect with us off YouTube, you could follow @WalksWallStreet on Twitter. So I actually had the pleasure of connecting with a very well-known casino executive over the weekend. I won't say which big casino brand it's from, but he told me, he's like, working at a casino is the best way to understand why you should never gamble. And I was like, whoa. I actually said that out loud. I was like, whoa, like that's so powerful. And he said it like so directly, because, you know, we were talking about business, we were talking about real estate, particularly in Manhattan and Miami. And, you know, he was telling me about the business. And he says, look, he's like, you're a young kid. He's like, don't get wrapped up in any of that stuff. He's like, working at a casino is the best way to understand why you should never gamble. Wow. Hey, Daniel G says, hey, Tom. So Daniel G is actually software engineer from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Now, Daniel G, we were actually just having a conversation about Argentina as it relates to their inflation rate. So we just got inflation numbers from Argentina, 114% inflation. So question for you, what is, like, how, from somebody who lives in Argentina, right, who is a contributor to the economy there, what are some of the things that you or your friends, what are you guys doing as an inflation hedge? Is it buying commodities, precious metals, diversifying to US equities, purchasing real estate? Like what are the people on the ground floor doing to combat that high inflation? Because 114% is almost, I can't even comprehend that in a way. All right, I'll give you one more look down Bowery. Now, speaking of casinos, did anybody hear about that big deal in Miami, that big land deal that just fell through? Now, Genting, if anybody's heard of that company, I believe it's a Malaysian casino operator. Genting was selling, or in talks of selling, a massive piece of land just north of the Miami Heat arena. I believe it was for $1.4 billion, and I think the deal just fell through. I'm not sure if Zozo Bob's in the chat. Zozo Bob's a big real estate guy in Miami. Maybe he could provide some context there, but yeah, that deal fell through. Let me catch up on some of the comments here. Got the Whole Foods on the corner. Mr. Don, so they can literally print money, and even that printout might be more expensive than the actual money. Emil Carr says, personally, I buy US stocks, buy US dollars, try to have no pesos. Wow, that's some great data there. So think about that. You have global inflation ramping. You know, US inflation's 4.7%. People are wondering why US stocks are going up. And you just heard it here. You know, this is a little piece of anecdotal data. But if one person in Argentina is saying, look, we're buying US stocks, we're buying real estate, we're buying gold, you know, think about that fund flow in the United States. Zozo Bob says, Genting in Miami spent years trying to get casinos approved, but they only paid $250 million or so. They would make a huge profit on the land alone. Yeah, I mean, think about that. So they paid $250 million for the land. They're trying to sell it for 1.2. Do you know why the deal fell through? Or you don't know? But yeah, I mean, that's a hefty profit, man. I think Miami, in terms of commercial real estate, is getting a little bit frothy now. Hey, Victor says, thank you for the live stream. Thank you so much. Anderson says, is Amazon falling behind the big techs? I don't know. I wouldn't say that. It's been a laggard, right? I mean, Amazon, even though it's definitely rebounding a lot off the bottom, it's outperformed in terms of a relative basis a lot of other stocks in the market. But in terms of mega cap tech, it's been a laggard amongst mega cap tech stocks for sure. Now, do you think that Andy Jassy will spin off the AWS business? I think that's the big question. Yeah, so Anderson, sure, it's a matter of timing, just like Alibaba. Yeah, so Alibaba, they're split up. I think they spun off their cloud computing business. And I think, didn't their CFO just step down or resign or something? Maybe I'm trying to think. I have so many things spinning around in my head, but I think the CFO of Alibaba just stepped down and there's going to be a new CFO now. Hey, sunshine after rain, what's up? Long time no see. Hopefully you're well. Hopefully you're having a good summer. Ah, okay. So they did. CFO of Alibaba did step down. So Sparks Carnival says, Tom, Alibaba split into 6 different companies with 6 CEOs, 6 board members, huge overhead. Now, why do you think they did that? Do you think there was a little bit of a nudge from the CCP to do that? Now, I gotta give, there's a really good follow on Twitter, Jim Osman. And he wrote a really good piece in Forbes. I think I retweeted it if you wanna check it out. Of his thesis about why Amazon is gonna spin off the AWS business. It was a really, really well-written piece. You can check that out if you just go to Twitter and follow @WalksWallStreet. I think it's like the 2nd or 3rd thing I retweeted. I think I actually pinned it to my profile. That's a really good read. Jim has an equity research firm in the city. Oh, look at this. This is a cool block. Tons of scaffolding though. Okay, so Zozo Bob says, Tom, Genting said the buyer had requested an extension of an exclusivity period and amendments to the terms of the purchase, and they said no. Wow. I wonder why. Maybe they wanted to do more diligence. I feel as if Genting doesn't have to sell. I mean, if you do something like that, that's sort of negotiating from a position of power, right? It's like, hey, I don't have to sell this. And they'll probably find somebody who will buy it. We'll see. Michael Joseph says, looks like St. Mark's Place. No, this is Elizabeth Street. Bleecker Street. St. Mark's is a little bit up this way. Not too far away from St. Mark's. Could probably walk there tonight. I wanted to take you guys, I wanted to sort of meander our path tonight. Sort of explore different streets, different neighborhoods, just so you could see the architectural diversity of the city. This is a very fashionable neighborhood that's going to lead you right into SoHo. Hey, Nicholas Persad, what's up, man? Long time no see. Hopefully you're well. And hopefully everything's going well with the kids. I think last time we heard from you, you were expecting a new member of the family. So God bless to that. Prodman says, thoughts on the market tomorrow, up, down, or sideways? I have no idea. Now, that question reminds me of an awesome video. And I think I actually shared this one on Twitter too. So, I think this was on C-SPAN. Well, let me cross here. I think this was in the late 90s. So Peter Lynch was talking in front of a group of his peers. And I think he got that question from the audience. And Peter Lynch did something kind of condescending, but funny. You know, he's a funny guy, Peter Lynch. He has a big personality. I think he's from Boston. And so somebody asked him that question. He's like, hey, what do you think the market's going to do tomorrow or next week or something? I forget what the exact question was. But Peter Lynch pulls a coin out of his pocket, you know, like a quarter or some sorts. And he flips a coin. And he's like, heads says the market's going to be higher. Tails says the market's going to be lower. And flips the coin. He's like, oh, it's heads. So it's going to be higher tomorrow. And his point was, he's like, look, I don't know if the market, this is the best coffee shop in the city, by the way. I got to plug it real quick. It's called Gasoline Alley Coffee. It is a phenomenal place. If you ever come to New York, you've got to try this. Right on the northern border of SoHo, right as you're coming down from NYU, right in the corner of Bleecker Street, Gasoline Alley Coffee. So what Peter Lynch was trying to say is that, look, he's like, so many people try to predict if the market's going to go up or down tomorrow and try to day trade the market. He's like, what I try to do is figure out which companies have a high probability of compounding out their earnings growth, right? So there's a very, very high correlation between GDP growth in America and corporate profits in America, translating to earnings growth, thus translating to equity valuations. So he's like, we did a case study at Fidelity, right? So Peter Lynch worked at Fidelity for a long time. He ran one of the most successful mutual funds on Wall Street, the Fidelity Magellan Fund. And he's like, we did a study of corporate profits in America, and corporate profits generally tend to go up 8% a year, right? On average. Obviously, you go through earnings recessions, but on average, companies in America generate about 8% earnings growth a year. So that implies the S&P ought to double every 8 to 12 years. He's like, so my bet is that American companies are going to continue on that trajectory of compounding out their earnings by 8%. So I don't know if the market's going to go up or down tomorrow, but over the long term, our bet here at Fidelity is that so long as that integrity of American capitalism is intact, where businesses will start and build their businesses and build their products and services in America, right? Because we have free markets here, that corporate profits and corporate earnings will go up about 8% a year. So we invest over that time horizon. So essentially what he was saying is day trading is more of a loser's game. What you should be doing, right, in his words, is trying to identify companies that have sustainable earnings growth and good earnings projections for the foreseeable future, 8 to 10 years. I wish I had the link to that video. Great video. We are now at Bond Street. Look at the contrast between the building and the clouds here in New York. Really beautiful shot. And these are the original streets in New York here. Yeah, Western Mass Dave says it's great that the rain is held off. I looked at the weather on Thursday. I think that was the last time we had this stream. And I said, it's supposed to downpour all weekend. And it didn't rain at all, like at all this weekend. It was actually really nice. It was just very, very humid. It was probably some of the most humid environment that I've ever experienced, at least so far this year. Again, I don't mind it, but many New Yorkers do. Hey, Jorge is here. It says, hello, Manhattan. Good to see you, Jorge. We're about to cross Great Jones Street. We're walking northbound on Lafayette. We'll make the light. Yeah, Nadie, so some of those buildings look historic, like they've never been remodeled before. Well, one of the cool things that's happening a lot, and this is actually happening a lot in SoHo. So this week, I actually want to take you guys to a really, really cool listing. The building is 74 Grand Street. I want you guys to check it out. Really beautiful building in SoHo. we always talk about those awesome SoHo loft style apartments. Now, 74 Grand Street from the outside looks exactly like what that viewer just described. It looks like it's never been, touched since, the 1800s or the early 1900s when the building was built. But it's like that for a reason, because a lot of developers come in, buy these buildings, and they do complete gut renovations and make ultra luxurious apartments. But due to some regulations in the city, in many cases you're not allowed to touch the facade, which I think is actually a really good rule because it sort of preserves the historical integrity of the neighborhood. So take a look at 74 Grand Street. The facade is absolutely unreal. It's the original cast iron facade, but the interior of the building is completely gut renovated, and it's almost like you're transitioning into a different world. It's really, really unique building. And I believe from the penthouse, it has direct access to the ceiling, the roof deck, where it has a really nice place to barbecue. I think there's a jacuzzi up there, and you have unobstructed views of Lower Manhattan. You could see the World Trade Center, and also you could see the entire Hudson Yard development, unobstructed view of One Vanderbilt, unobstructed view of the Empire State Building, and all of Billionaires Row. It is such a cool building. So oftentimes I kind of, could hate on the regulatory environments and the regulators, but I think that's actually a pretty good rule in New York. Some particular buildings are labeled historical buildings, where you cannot alter some parts of the buildings, particularly the facade, so you keep that historical and architectural integrity intact. So check it out. It's an awesome building. 74 grand. And I think each unit's on the market for like maybe $20,000 a month rentals. I think this is where the Blue Man Group plays. Look at the architecture on that. Hey, Edward Adams. Speaking of Great Jones Street, Tom, have you ever checked out that coffee spot on Broadway in Great Jones? This is the world's best coffee shop. I got so distracted I have not. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow if I have time. I just get so distracted throughout the day. I remember that live stream specifically. Yeah, Vivian says, love those, Tom. 3 bathrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4.3 million. Now, I think Corcoran originally had the listing, right? They originally got the listing on the building. But I think it just actually transferred over to Douglas Elliman. And I think they're rental conversions now. So I think they're trying to shoot to rent them out. But it's an awesome place. Really nice building. Especially for people that want access to SoHo. I think that's probably the trophy building there now. Hey, Jules D says, hey Tom, how are you doing? Where would you like to own an apartment in New York City? If there was no price cap, if I had unlimited money, probably right on Central Park South. I love that neighborhood. That's my favorite neighborhood in the city, Central Park South. Right on Billionaires Row or in SoHo, one of those really nice lofts. I think between those two neighborhoods, I would probably choose. I mean, anything near Central Park, particularly under 72nd Street, my bet is that it'll always hold its value and it'll always have really, really good price appreciation, in my opinion. And that's just due to the amount of money that's there and the amount of historical properties that are there that are really sought after by a lot of international buyers and tourists. I mean, think about it. You have the Plaza Hotel, you have the Sherry Netherland, Now you have the entire Billionaires Row development, right? Pretty much anything from 57th to 58th Street in Central Park South. I mean, you have the highest concentration of wealth in the world. So if you're looking to buy in New York and you're not like a multi-billionaire, if you can find something decently priced for under $3 million in and around Central Park South, I think that's going to be a big winner. I see some particular parts of New York that go in and out of fashion, and I think a lot of New Yorkers will know what I mean by this. Right now, Tribeca is very, very fashionable. So if you look at it on a price per square foot basis, Tribeca is trading at a premium to other neighborhoods in New York. But who's to say Tribeca is always going to be super, super fashionable? Now, I'm not saying that, you know, Tribeca is a bad place to live. It's not. It's gorgeous. But, you know, there's a lot of new development in Tribeca. It's very hip. A lot of celebrities are there, so people want to be there. But you're never going to lose the character of Central Park South and having Central Park as your backyard. I think that's more of like a timeless staple in New York City. Some of these other newer developing neighborhoods oftentimes come and go, but I think some of the more classic New York neighborhoods will, in my opinion, if I had to bet, will outperform. Ooh, look what happened here. What is this? Yeah, Sparks Carnival, that's true. Long Island City, Queens has been very fashionable. I mean, if you want to talk about a premium for price per square footage, Long Island City is that. A lot of families moving to LIC, you know, more space, and you have probably, I mean, arguably the best views in Manhattan, right? Hopefully sanitation will clean this up. Hey, Rocks is Tom. Everywhere around Central Park should continue to appreciate and value. There's no reason for that real estate to depreciate. That includes 110th Street. That's a really good point. You talk about 110th Street Cathedral Parkway. For those of you who don't know, that's the very top of Central Park. So Central Park goes from 59th Street to 110th Street Cathedral Parkway. And you're actually starting to see, you know, maybe we'll do that. We have to do that. We've never done that before on the live stream. Right on 110th Street, you're starting to see big new development structures go up, but you have the opposite looking view, right? So you're overlooking Billionaires Row. That's an interesting thought and an interesting bet. Is it possible that within my lifetime, we'll see Cathedral Parkway, 110th Street, that borders the northernmost side of Central Park? Could that potentially turn into the next Billionaires Row in a way? Because imagine if you build high enough there. I mean, you see all of Billionaires Row, you see all of Midtown Manhattan, and you see all of Lower Manhattan. That's interesting. That's interesting. Now, I'm not sure if you can build, I don't know how high you could build there, but I think it'd be interesting to find out. Now, if you've ever seen an aerial view of New York, you have Midtown Manhattan, huge skyscrapers, and then it's sort of, the buildings are super, super low to the ground, and then Lower Manhattan, it peaks up again. And I think it's due to the bedrock. I think there's limits on what you can build height-wise in places like SoHo, Chinatown, you know, Gramercy. And I think I think it's unique to the bedrock and like the foundation, I think. Hey, George Hernandez, what's up? Yeah, I saw that on Twitter. You sent it to me. I'm not too sure about World Trade Center 5. I got to do some investigation into that. But look, the development site in and around the World Trade Center has really been a horror story for, unfortunately, ever since 9/11. It's been a lot of greed from developers. It's been a big money grab in a way. So I don't really know what's going to go on with that. I'll have to read the article you sent me. All right, let's continue on up. We'll actually cross over to Broadway so you guys can see the beautiful views of the Empire State Building. But I think we pretty much covered everything we need to cover. We talked about inflation. We had a really good conversation there. We talked about Tuesday. The Census Bureau is going to report on new home sales data for May. Analysts are predicting about 659,000 new homes sold. Obviously, that's on an annually adjusted basis, right? And it said that the median transaction price is supposed to fall all the way to $420,800. That's all the way down from an all-time record high of about $500,000 since last October. So that makes sense, right? Interest rates have been going up. If you've been listening to a lot of the earnings reports of these home builder companies, one of the main ways that they're able to move product right now is to offer concessions, right? Points buy down on your mortgage, you know, throwing in some money in the deal. And then I think the only thing that's going to go on next week is the stress tests. So the Federal Reserve is going to release their stress tests for the big banks, right? This was really prevalent after the 2008 financial crisis. So a lot of these Wall Street mega banks have to endure stress tests. I think for good reason, right? Ever since the financial crisis, banks have to have higher capital requirements. They have to cap how much money they could lend out. Whoa, look at that. That is an awesome view of the Empire State Building. Hey, Bree Grahams, what's up? Good to see you. Now, there was a horrible tragedy that happened just on this corner the other week. Did anybody see that? There was I think it was a professor, a retired, I believe it was an NYU professor, got struck and killed by an MTA bus right here, like 2 weeks ago. It was horrible. That's why you got to be very, very careful when you're crossing the street, especially during rush hour in the city. All right, once we get out from under the scaffolding, we'll be able to see a better view. East 14th Street. I think you could see all the remnants of the celebrations today. Got all these guys playing chess. What do you guys think? Should we hustle these guys in a game of chess? I think they could probably beat me. Hey, Tariq Khan, what's up? Come on, maybe I've missed your comments. Steve Gonzalez, what's up? Likewise, Tariq, always a pleasure to see you here. But we're coming up on my stop. We've already been streaming for about an hour and 50 minutes. It's supposed to be an hour live stream tonight, but we get caught away having a good time, hanging out, having a chat. So I'm going to jump on the train here. I will see you guys all tomorrow. If you enjoyed the stream tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video. Click the subscribe button if you're new, and we'll see you at 8:30 tomorrow, Monday. Hopefully you all are recharged and rested and ready for the week ahead. It should be a pretty busy one. I think in 2 days is officially halfway through the year. Year's definitely come and gone pretty fast. So, and then it'll be the 4th of July, and hopefully we'll be streaming the fireworks live. Maybe we'll be in Greenpoint, Brooklyn for that. I don't know, I have to see. I don't even know where they're gonna do the fireworks show this year. It seems to always be ever changing. But anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. So Steve CR, appreciate it. Tariq Khan, Austin City Limits, Brick Stonewall, Steve Gonzalez. Thank you, sir, always a pleasure. Jadson, Sean DM, appreciate it. Fred X, Victor D, Joe Driver. There's always a bull market somewhere. You guys just need to know where to look. And I'll see you all right back here tomorrow, live from New York at 8:30 p.m. Steph UH, Dusty Cole, Austin City Limits, Nina touring different places, Cindy Foley, Hawaii, NBA Elias, Sparks Carnival. We'll see you guys tomorrow.